Okay, for next week on Wednesday's activity, you will need a pencil, an oil pastel, doesn't matter which colour, but maybe white or grey would be good, a small paintbrush, and a pair of scissors, and then your water pot, and if you have some of the drawing ink left, and we will be using our tissue paper that I put in your pack as well. Okay, so starting with our sketchbooks, what we're going to do is draw out some shards of glass, and I'll go through this in the session a little bit more thoroughly, but essentially we're looking at something kind of smashed and broken, and we've got the pieces here. Okay, maybe one more piece here. So taking up plenty of space in your sketchbook, and I've just added a little element of 3D to those pieces, and then we're going to go over those pencil lines with our oil pastel, which is going to act as a kind of almost like a resist, and try to stop the tissue paper dye from running out into the rest of the page. So I'm just going over that very quickly, but we'll take our time a little bit more in the session. This is just so that you have a little idea of what we're going to do, and make sure you've got the right things with you. If you don't have the tissue paper, that's okay, I'll get you to use some watercolours. So with the tissue, we're going to cut it up, or if you don't have any scissors or want to use the scissors, you can just tear it into some pieces. It can be various different shapes. Nice to have some small bits. So you can see there are sort of variety of size. And what we're going to do first is, using the water, add a little bit of water to the paper, and then we're going to start placing our tissue on top of the water, and then get a little bit of water on the top as well. So you're sort of putting water on top and underneath. And you can start to see how the dye is starting to peel off. Don't use the light white or the beige, they don't really work that well. And what you're going to try and do is keep within the need water first. So keep within your shards. So these are going to end up as being shards of stained glass window. That's the idea. And if, like this one, they overlap, then that's fine too, because it will mix the dye and make a new colour, which can be really nice. So don't worry too much if it doesn't fit perfectly. just try and squeeze in as many. Oh, I've got a pink under there. Colours and pieces as we can inside. If you get like this to the end, we can just fold it over. So remembering a little bit of water on both sides. You don't have to have very much water. In fact, too much can really sort of flood it. So water on the top, and then pieces over the top of the water, and then water over the top of the pieces. So that will help the dye come through. But sometimes you can get these lovely effects. So don't worry if when you get to peeling it off it hasn't quite worked how you might imagine. There's lots of interesting variation within these. And then there's a little bit of a shard there. I'm just going to use the colour that I get from the tissue rather than add a new, and I'll do that the same here. Can you see I'm using the dye almost like a paint? Okay, and we'll do this little top one up here. Some nice blues, dark blue as well. So actually cutting them into triangular shapes is quite useful if you're doing these sort of shards. Because they'll fit a little bit better. So again, water underneath, and then placing your tissue on top. Hopefully can match up some bits. Again, we'll take our time with this. I'm just hurrying so it's a bit more interesting for you, because otherwise I'm just going to be here for ages. Okay, and then remember to put the water on top as well. So you're thinking about both sides of the tissue being wet, and that is what kind of enables the dye to flow on in there. And just using that dye to add a bit of colour to the corners and the edges. And then what we're going to do to make this sort of stark, we're going to leave these on, and we're going to get our ink, and we're going to go round the outside of the shards with the pure ink. I'm not even watering it down this time, because I want that contrast of the colourful shards of glass against a black background. So I'm just going round the very edges that I want really dark. And then what I'll do is I'll add some water to make it go a little bit further. So moving, essentially painting all the white bits around the shards of glass. And when you get close to the oil pastel, if it's the watery bit, it should repel it a little bit like that. you're not going to paint by accident on the shards of glass. Here we go. Go right behind the shards. And this is just a way I've been thinking of how we can incorporate this tissue paper into something that's not just completely abstract. So thinking about these, and I think it could look really dramatic, and it'd be lovely to see how everyone else has done each, because I reckon that everyone's will be different in their own unique way, and that will be really good. Okay, still going round. Yeah, don't worry about the edges too much. Okay, and then I'm gonna just wash. I like that kind of grey that happens when you mix the water, so almost like a browny grey. We'll just go around the outside. So the whole page is going to be nice and dark. Okay. And we'll have a bit more time to make that accurate. And then what we'll do is we'll eventually start to peel these bits off, and you can collect them in a piece of tissue, and actually if you want to you could save them for another go, because they actually hold so much dye that you can go again. And sometimes, yeah, like sometimes these colours together look really lovely. So that's that one. And yeah, for Wednesday you could think about what kind of shapes you might want to, you know, do a non-smashed bit of glass, and try and do a whole sort of stained glass window shape if you're feeling brave. But we'll have plenty of time in the session. This is just a little quick taster so that you know what you're up to next week. All right, and there we have it, our tissue papered shards of glass. And what we might do next time is maybe add some oil pastel that will resist underneath as a little kind of specks of it. But yeah, I'm pleased with that. And look forward to seeing you on Wednesday. Thank you.